Hi, welcome to another edition of Legal Beef. Today we're going to be focusing more on the legal because the beef recently got married and he's on his honeymoon. And so today I've got with me Elizabeth, and we're going to focus a little bit more on the legal.
So Ray, I'm just going to be asking you some questions about yourself, and I'd like to give everybody an insight as to who you are, some of the things that you've done. Can you kind of like take us back as to, your history as an attorney? So let's give them an insight as to your legal career. Were you the first attorney in your family?
I was. So I'm a first to rise, which means there are no attorneys in my family, none whatsoever. But I think from an early age, probably by junior high, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I was doing some UIL competitions and some things like that. When I got to St. Mary's University, which was pretty interesting, right? I'd never been on a university campus, including St. Mary's University. There was no college road trips, for me. That wasn't a thing. And so when I applied to St. Mary's, it was like sight unseen. And when I was admitted and I showed up there, I remember it was August the 15th, and I'd never been on that campus before. So I went and picked up my books, and like you're supposed to do, you had your books, what you had to buy, your school supplies. I went to the bookstore, and when I went to go pay for my books, they had some like bumper stickers there, and there was one for St. Mary's Law School. So I said, "Oh, that's cool," and I bought that bumper sticker, and I put it on my cover of my book, one of my books. And when I got back to the freshman dorm, my classmates were making fun of me because they said, "Why do you have that sticker on your book?" And I said, "Well, because I'm in law school. That's why I came here to go to law school." And they're like, "You're not in law school." I said, "No, yes, I am. I am in law school." They're like, "No. First, you got to do 4 years, and then you apply to law school. You're not in law school yet." So that was it was a shock. It was embarrassing, but that is how green behind the ears I was. I thought when I applied to St. Mary's, I'd already applied and been admitted to their law school. So that's where it started. I had 4 wonderful years at St. Mary's. Honestly, they made me feel like a family there. I found community, and it was very important, I think, to my career development. And if I had to do it all over again and somebody said, "Oh, you can go to Harvard or you could go anywhere you want to go," I wouldn't change it. I loved my undergraduate 4 years there. And then after that, I applied to only one law school. I applied to the University of Texas School of Law. Again, very naive of me, not realizing how difficult it is to get into UT. Had they rejected me, it would have been like I would have been devastated because I didn't apply anywhere else. I would have lost a year, I guess. And it wasn't. It wasn't that I didn't apply to other schools out of arrogance. I didn't apply to other schools because I was naive and just thought it was, if I apply, they're going to admit me. And well, thank goodness they did. So I went to UT Law and was there for the 3 years and got out in 1988.
And so did you keep the bumper sticker book as kind of like a source of motivation?
No. I'm sure I was so embarrassed. I just, threw away the cover. Back then they had this like paper cardboard covers for school books,
right,
back in the old days. And so I'm sure I threw away the cover out of sheer embarrassment.
Well, it's a neat story.
Well, that's proof of first to rise. I can tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you pay for college and law school? If you like you've mentioned before, and I know that, you were raised by a single mom who worked multiple jobs.
Well, some Pell Grants, some scholarship, and some work study. And St. Mary's offered work study, and I was able to get into their photo lab. So I did photography, I did slideshows, I worked in the photo lab, and that was fun, developing film and in the dark rooms, or I forgot what we even call them anymore. But so I worked my way through St. Mary's. And then when I got to law school, I worked all 3 years of my law school. My first year, I worked at Advantage Rent-A-Car across from the airport, and really wonderful owners. They knew I was a law student. They knew I needed to study, and there was a pattern for car rentals. When a flight would come in, you get busy, but then there were lulls, and they would let me study while I was during a lull. So I did that for about a year, and then for the last year and a half of law school, I was very fortunate to get a job with the Texas Attorney General's office in the antitrust division. And there, the division chief, Eileen Evans, she interviewed me, and I don't know really why she gave me a chance, but she did, and it was at a perfect moment for me because I was really down in the dumps. And she said, "Yeah, come on." And I worked with her for a year and a half, and it turned out she was one of my great mentors who really taught me a lot of what it takes to be a good trial lawyer.
And so, at what point in your school career did you decide what type of law you wanted to go and practice?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I went to law school, I thought, of course, I didn't know anything about law, obviously. I thought going to undergrad was law school. But in my mind, I thought about international law. And, because my mom's family's from Mexico. My grandfather, my mom's father, was a custom broker in Ojinaga, Chihuahua. And my uncle, who's married to my mom's sister, was he was involved with U.S. Customs on the U.S. side, right? U.S. Customs. And so the only business I knew, really, I didn't know, but I was like connected to was customs. And so I thought, well, I've got some family there, and so I could learn import-export law, and that was going to be my legal career, import-export. And then what changed was I took my first year of law school. I really didn't like it. I didn't like law school. When I finished my first year, I had made a decision to quit and not continue at law school. And that summer, early in the summer, I had decided I was going to apply to the Peace Corps, and that would be, something I could do. But I was very fortunate that this man by the name of Mario Gonzalez, who turns out is my father-in-law, but at that time he was just my fraternity brother's father. We were at somebody's wedding together, and he had heard that I was going to quit law school, or not continue law school. And he asked me, what did I think I was going to do? I said, well, I'm going to apply to the Peace Corps. And he said, why do you think that they would accept you in the Peace Corps? And he set me back. Well, because I'm going to volunteer, right? They need volunteers. And he's like, no, you don't have any skills that can be useful for the Peace Corps. You're not a nurse, are you? No, sir. You're not an engineer, are you? No, sir. You're not an architect, are you? No, sir. You're not a farmer, are you? Well, no, sir. And he said, well, what skill do you have? That you're a political science major. You think that's going to help them where they need it? And I was like, well, no, sir, I guess not. And he said, well, this is what's going to happen. It's going to take about a year for this application process to work. And you may find out that they don't even need you. They're going to reject your application because you have nothing to offer. So why don't you go back to law school and start your second year, go ahead and apply to the Peace Corps. And if you get rejected, you haven't lost a year. But if if you get accepted, well, then you have a decision to make. So I'm very grateful to Mr. Gonzalez, my father-in-law. I call him Papo now, that he basically, encouraged me to continue, because once I did, and once I started my second year, things started to pick up because I'd gotten a job with Eileen Evans, and also because I took trial advocacy, and our adjunct professor was the state district judge. John Dietz was our adjunct professor in trial advocacy, and And during that class, we were required to stand up in front of the group and conduct a mock examination, a mock cross-examination. And really one of the defining moments for my legal career was I got up and I did a cross-examination. And when I finished, Judge Dietz said, he looked at me and he said, one of these days you will be convincing juries to take away Social Security checks from old ladies. And, at first I was like, what does that mean? And that mean it, but I quickly realized it was a supreme compliment. He thought that I would be able to convince juries to take candy away from a baby, essentially. And that comment really sparked, lit the fire in, my belly, so to speak, and made me believe in myself and believe that I could do this. And so between him and Eileen Evans, who put me on some really big cases, I was just a law student. I was assisting, but I got to work with her on some huge cases, landmark cases that the state of Texas was bringing against others. And those experiences caused me to go towards litigation.
And then how did you end up down here in the Valley, the Rio Grande Valley?
That's a great question. So my friends in law school were from the Valley, or several of them were from the Valley. And back then it was hard to get law students to return to the Rio Grande Valley. So one of my friends in law school, her name was Mary Landrum, the daughter of Dr. Kenneth Landrum. She said, hey, some friends of ours are coming up to UT for on-campus recruiting. Would you please go interview with them? Because if they don't get people dropping their applications, then they're going to stop coming, so they need to fill up their day. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So I dropped an application with them, and they gave me an interview. I was late to the interview, which is it's like the mortal sin. You're never late to this 15-minute interview. It's only a 15-minute window. And the reason why I was late is I had to pick up my suit from the dry cleaners. But as luck would have it, I was a few minutes late, and Mary Landrum had stopped by to say hello to the folks that were there, that were doing the interviewing. So not only did they not miss me, Mary was there to make an introduction. And so that was really nice. And I knew I wanted to probably return to the border to practice law, being raised on the border. I couldn't go back to Presidio because there's no lawyers there, and you need another lawyer to make money. You got to fight with somebody, otherwise you're just going to be doing pro bono work for everybody. No, and at the end of the day, I had a job offer to stay at the Attorney General's office with Eileen Evans. She wanted me to stay, but they could only pay, the going rate was $27,000 a year. Or I received an offer from that firm from the Valley, Jarvis, Schwartz, and Kittleman, and they offered me a $5,000 signing bonus, which is more money I'd ever had in my life at one time, and a $33,000 starting salary. And so I told Eileen, I said, I've got $110,000 in student debt, even though I had, scholarships and Pell Grants and work study and all that. I've got a lot of debt. So I'm going to take this higher paying job, but don't worry, I'll come back. And she said, no, you won't. She said, you're going to go down there, and once you make your life, you're not going to come back. I said, I really believed I would. But she was right. I never did. It turned out the Valley was a fantastic place to practice law and to raise a family. When I came down here for my office visit, Mark Schwartz, who was the Schwartz in Jarvis, Schwartz, and Kittleman, he gave me a ride, showed me the area, and he told me, Ray, you really need to come. McAllen is on the verge of an economic boom, and you have an opportunity to get in on the ground floor. This would be a great place for you to start. And, in hindsight, he was 100% right. But what's really cool is that he told me that in 1988, And I'm talking about Nolana was a caliche road from 281 all the way to 2nd Street. That's how much the area has grown. But every single year that I've been in the Valley, which has been 38 years now, we can say the same thing. And here we are in 2026, and we can say the same thing. McAllen is still booming. It's never stopped.
Yeah, that's right. The growth is crazy. So now you're down here in the Valley. Tell us a little bit about your early career as a new lawyer.
I started with Jarvis Schwartz and Kittleman, which was a pretty small firm. There were 5 lawyers, and they were doing some litigation and some transactional real estate stuff. And the litigation that they were doing was mostly they were representing banks, doing some collection work, doing some lender liability and consumer litigation, DTPA, and some bankruptcy on the creditor side, right, representing the banks in bankruptcy court, which was fun because it got me into the courtroom more often. And so I sort of cut my teeth on bankruptcy litigation in the beginning. And there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of work in the Valley at the time. And so that's how I got started. And where everything changed for me, and I call it serendipity or providence, whatever you want to call it. My first year, 1988, one of the clients of the firm, a big farmer, he had a girlfriend who was working for a local for-profit psychiatric hospital called Charter Palms. She was a nurse, and she had been fired, she says, because she had refused to commit illegal acts on behalf of her employer. And what she claimed was that the employer was requiring the nurses to chart symptoms that were consistent with a diagnosis that was covered by the insurance, even though the child didn't have those symptoms. And so she got fired, and she found a better paying job 3 months later, but she was very angry about it. And so her boyfriend, who was a big farmer, came to the firm and asked if we would represent her. So being the low man on the totem pole, I got that case. And we worked it, and we were finding out that, there was something really ugly going on at this hospital. And back then, the hospital was very aggressive on television. They were they would go to schools, and what the allegation was, they were bringing in advertising for parents to come in. They would separate their child from the parents and talk to the parents, find out if they had insurance. If they did, find out what the insurance would cover. And then if there was insurance, they would say the kid needs to be admitted because, they're in really bad shape. And even if the parents resisted, they were taught to push shame buttons to cause the parents to leave the child. And they would give them a diagnosis that was covered by insurance and chart symptoms. And then once the insurance ran out, here's your child back there. We've done all we can, which really messes up their future. Yeah. The child could be diagnosed with schizophrenia if that's what was covered, even though they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And anyways, it's just terrible. So during the course of that litigation, they had a parent company called Charter Medical out of Georgia. So my boss, Mark Schwartz, and I, we came to Georgia to take depositions of the corporate representatives. And while we were in Georgia, Mark says, "Look, we're going to stay an extra day. I've got us a treat. We're going to go tour the headquarters of Coca-Cola Enterprises, like Big Coke, Mother Coke." And as it turns out that a few years before, Valley Coca-Cola, the local bottling company in the Valley, which was owned by a Vannie Cook family, had sold the bottling plant back to Coca-Cola, to Mother Coke. And Mark Schwartz represented Valley Bottling Company in that sale. And so the Coca-Cola in-house lawyer who worked with Mark in that transaction said, "Hey, if you're ever in Atlanta, come to Coca-Cola. I'll give you a tour." So that's what we did. And we got up that morning, we got to Coca-Cola plant, or to the building. We got a really cool tour. Security was very intense. And for this, little boy from Presidio, it was a real treat for me. And then the lawyer told us, I've got a really special thing for you guys. We're going to go upstairs and you're going to get to meet Tom Sherman. He's the general counsel of Coca-Cola. So think about that. You're talking about the general counsel of one of the largest companies in the world, certainly one of the most recognized brands in the world. And these two lawyers from McAllen, Texas, are going to be in the office of the general counsel. So we're super excited. We go upstairs, and when we get to the office, his executive secretary comes out and says, "I'm so sorry. There's been a development, and Mr. Sherman is not going to be able to see you." And so we were just kind of disappointed. But behind the wall, we could hear a man screaming at the top of his lungs, "Gee, damn it, where the F is Alton, Texas?" And I'm new to the Valley, so I didn't recognize it. But Mark Schwartz said, "Well, that's where we're from." So the executive secretary went and told Mr. Sherman, and he said, "Bring him in here." Mr. Sherman was watching television on CNN, watching the Alton bus accident rescue ongoing. It was 9 in the morning, 9:20 in the morning, somewhere around there. And the Coca-Cola truck had knocked the Alton school bus into the caliche pit, and they were trying to rescue the children. And it was unfolding on national television. And Mark Schwartz and I are standing in the office of general counsel for Coca-Cola as it's happening. So as a result of that, we got put on the trial team. And we were ground zero for the Coca-Cola defense team. Obviously had their national counsel, their regional counsel, their trial counsel, but we were their local counsel. And they doubled our footprint overnight. Coke doubled our office space. Coke paid for all of our office furniture, paid for our new staff to cover what we were going to need. We were the repository for the documents. They got me a cell phone. Those cell phones had just come out. It was it used to be called a brick.
Yeah.
And they were $500. This is a 1988, 89.
With the retractable antenna.
Yeah. No, this one was a fixed antenna. But I had a $500 cellular phone, and I started strutting up and down the streets going, "Look at me. I've got this $500 phone." I thought it was, and so all of a sudden we go from handling these, pretty small litigation cases, collections for banks, and to now we're on like one of the most important cases in personal injury history. 21 children sadly, tragically lost their life, and so many other children were badly injured on that bus. And so now I'm thrust into this litigation where on both sides, on the plaintiff side and on the defense side, you have some of the top trial lawyers in the state who are involved, some of the best expert witnesses. So now we're traveling all over the United States for depositions of experts, both liability and medical. It was fascinating for me to go from 0 to 120 miles an hour overnight. But that's what kicked off my litigation career and really put it into warp speed. I've never had to look back.
And since then, I'm sure you've had other big cases that you could tell us so many stories about, but are there any certain ones that stand out?
I get asked that sometimes. And there's just, I've been doing this 38 years old. I've tried so many cases. It's an absolute pleasure to stand in front of a jury and get to talk to them. It's a great privilege to stand in front of a jury from the community and advance the interests of a client. There's no greater thrill than that. One of the cases I do like to talk about was actually by my brother-in-law. So a guy named Jimmy Patterson, married to my sister Linda. Jimmy was the county judge, the administrative county judge of LaSalle County, Texas. That's in Cotulla, between Laredo and San Antonio. And Jimmy had been an elected official there for a long time, county treasurer, and then he was county judge. Everybody loves him. And he had this one year he had an opponent, and the opponent was accusing Jimmy of financial misconduct. Linda and Jimmy had built a new home in Cotulla, a modest 3-bedroom home, but it was a new home in a very poor community. So this opponent started attributing, like public corruption to Jimmy, and saying that, he must have stolen the money from the city, to build his home. And it was just really ugly, terrible things. And Linda was so upset. We were all upset. Jimmy was upset. But I was like, let me go after him. Let me go after him. I'll sue him for defamation. I'll shut him down. And Jimmy wouldn't let me do it. He just wouldn't let me do it. It got bad enough to where the San Antonio Express News ran a story about it as well. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There must be something there. Jimmy lost the election. He lost. And it was obviously attributed to the negative, campaigning that went on. So once it was over, then, his reputation had been hurt significantly. And so they let me loose. So I went after the guy, and I brought a lawsuit against him for defamation, conducted discovery, took his deposition, and as it turned, and of course by then, now this other guy's the county judge, and he's had a chance to assume office and find out that the things he was saying were patently untrue. And so when I took his deposition and challenged him on the things that he had said, he quickly backed down and admitted that that there was no evidence of any financial wrongdoing on the part of Jimmy. And so, the case was going great. So now the county's lawyers, they said, let's go mediate this case. So we went to go mediate the case, and I told them, they're like, oh, what's your demand? How much money am I going to ask for? They thought I was going to ask for a lot of money. I said, I only want $1. I want $1. But I want the county judge to write an apology letter, a retraction and an apology letter that I'm going to write, and he's going to sign. Well, those lawyers were thrilled because it wasn't going to cost money. They just needed to get this guy to acknowledge, that he messed up. And they said, great. So I wrote out the retraction the way I wanted it. Where he completely falls on the sword, apologizes to the harm that he did, not only to Jimmy, but to Jimmy's family. And he signed it. Okay. It was already the holiday season, the Christmas holiday season. So what I did was I took that letter that he signed, and Cotulla has a regional newspaper that comes out once a week or whatever at a Pierce Hall. And I took out a 1-page ad, and that 1-page ad was the letter. And so it came out, and I felt really good about that, right? Didn't charge my brother-in-law a penny, for any of this work. Unfortunately, it wasn't the end, because the county judge, after that letter came out and really embarrassed him, he wrote a letter to the editor, and he said, I didn't write that letter. Mr. Thomas wrote that letter, and my lawyers made me sign it because they didn't want to spend any money, defending the lawsuit. I was like, So then what I did was I took the evidence that I had developed in the case, including the testimony where this guy admitted that he had nothing to support anything, and that he was sort of remorseful. And I took those deposition clips, the question and the answer, the best ones, and I created a 2-page ad. The center, like when you open the center, I don't know, what do you call that in the media? The center one.
Like a centerfold kind of?
Yeah, the centerfold.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and that came out on Christmas Day. And, so that it had the letter, it had his little letter to the editor, and then it had all of his testimony and other evidence showing that everything he said was fabricated and a lie.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. And that was my Christmas present.
And they didn't do anything to him, like, as a judge? Like, he didn't have to step down or
No, he got voted out of office later on.
karma?
And the interesting thing is, he turned out to be a decent judge too. And I think Jimmy is not the kind of person who holds a grudge, and they ended up finding common ground and working together. But yeah, that was a fun case.
Yeah, surely. Unfortunate for your brother-in-law, but
Yeah, it was, but it all turned out.
now, did you have any partners? I mean, you weren't a partner initially, but when you became partner, who were some of like your first partners, your law partners?
When I first joined Jarvis, Schwartz, and Kittleman, I joined as an associate, of course, and baby lawyer. Glenn Jarvis, who's a water law expert, Wes Kittleman, who came over from Allison Hall and is one of the premier transactional lawyers in the state of Texas, and Mark Schwartz. Mark and Glenn Jarvis had come over from Ewers and Toothaker, and Mark was started off as a transaction lawyer, but pivoted to litigation. And Mark died in a terrible accident, and when he was in his mid-30s. I was still in my 20s, and he died in a terrible accident. And then there was J.W. Dyer and Ray Cowley. When the Coca-Cola case was winding up, Mark decided to leave the firm and join some lawyers out of Houston. They're bigger lawyers, but bigger scale, bigger cases, more plaintiff work. And I was invited to go with him. And, the typical wining and dining, I got flown up to Houston, and we went out to Tony's, nice restaurants. And it was very alluring, because, it's,
But this is while the Coca-Cola case is ongoing?
no, it was wrapped up.
Okay.
It was wrapped up. There are a lot of tentacles to that Coca-Cola case, but so there was probably some form of it still pending, but the bulk of it was already done. And it was very alluring to go because of, the money and the trappings of wealth and all of that. But I ultimately, and I anguished over it, but I decided to stay where I was because I'm an extremely loyal person. And I didn't want to fix what wasn't broken. And I was honestly kind of afraid to go down that other path, worried about where it might take me, with that kind of money. So I stayed put. Another thing about that Coca-Cola case, right after this tragedy happens, we get back from Atlanta, and we're gearing up for it. And very early on, these victims are looking for lawyers. I'd say they're looking for lawyers. Every runner in the world was trying to sign these cases up. At that time, Sandra was still working. We didn't have children, so she was still working outside the home. She was working for what was then called the Texas Workforce Commission in Mission, Texas. So some of these families from Alton, they're seasonal workers, and when they were out of work, this was the office that they would have to go to for unemployment. And so I remember getting a call from Sandra saying, "Hey, some of the mothers here are looking for representation. Are you interested?" Right there early in my career, I was at an ethical crossroads. I could have left that firm that I was at and signed up these moms and, but it would have, and I don't know what, I was already representing Coke, right? Even though I was a baby lawyer, was I going to switch sides for the money? Yeah. And because, that's a percentage of potentially a lot of money as opposed to my $33,000 a year salary. So, but that was another crossroads. And, I thanked Sandra's boss and said, "No, I'm already committed here." So I stayed. So I stayed with Jarvis Schwartz. I mean, well, it was Jarvis Schwartz and Kittleman. Mark left. And when Mark left, we reconstituted the firm. That was about 3 years into my practice out of law school. And I became a partner in the new law firm. So normally partnership can be 6, 7, 8, 10 years. After 3 years, I became a partner. And the name of the firm was changed to Jarvis and Kittleman. Jarvis and Kittleman. And it stayed like that for some years until I think 1998. So I guess that's 10 years into my practice. And I decided to go out on Bobby Ramirez approached me and said, hey, if you ever want to do something, let me know. So we did. We started Thomas and Ramirez, and we did that. We were successful. We started bringing on some other lawyers to help us. And I ended up getting back together with Wes Kittleman and Veronica Gonzalez and Mike McGurk and Scott Walsh, and we reconstitute the firm, and we call it Kittleman, Thomas, Ramirez, and Gonzalez. And we ended up getting up to about 18 lawyers, so we were pretty big. And I had so many young associates come through our firm that I mentored and helped develop, and to this day, I love to see them and see their success. They're doing really well, and that's been real gratifying. Ultimately, I decided to run for the Court of Appeals. That's another story in and of itself. And when I decided to run for the Court of Appeals in 2017, I left the firm so that my 1-year campaign would not have a financial impact on my partners, because it was going to be a full-time campaign. And when that was unsuccessful, I continued as a sole practitioner. So I've been solo since 2017. So that's already 9 years. Yeah, 9 years. I still have a couple lawyers working with me, and I still have my paralegals from back then, but I'm officially a sole practitioner.
And so your paralegals have been with you for how many years total?
Linda and Leo Garza and Linda Espinosa have been with me about 12 years each, and Lisa Sean, 30 years. 30 long years. She's something else.
Well, I think that says something about you, that they've, wanted to stay for so many years.
It's we're a family. We're a very tight-knit family. We don't have turnover. Don't have much drama. And thankfully, I've been blessed with, really throughout my career. Mom always told me, if I want to be successful, surround myself with good people, and I have. And she said, make sure they're women, and most of them have, and that's what's kept me going.
So we've talked about your most meaningful case. What would you say was the most drawn out or your longest case that you've ever worked on?
It's still on.
Yeah?
16 years in running.
Wow.
Okay, so 16.
Is that a record of some sort?
Well, it's certainly a record in my book. Yeah, no, there's not many cases that last, more than, once you hit 10 years, that's a really long time. So it's I'm representing Gloria Trevi. It's a defamation case that we filed against TV Azteca and Pati Chapoy. And, they accused Gloria of aiding and abetting Sergio Andrade in like a sex ring for children. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. And this has been going on for years down in Mexico. And there were criminal charges brought against her. She was arrested. She spent almost 5 years in jail waiting for her trial. When she was finally tried, she was fully acquitted of all charges. But it was really hard. By then her career was in shambles. Before this happened, she was known as the Madonna of Mexico. Her career was just so fantastic, and this took her down to nothing. And when she was acquitted, she literally had to start over from scratch, plus with all the stigma. So to get away from it, she moved to McAllen, and started her life over here and her music career over here. But in 2009, that was the 10-year anniversary of the scandal, and TV Azteca decided they were going to do a 10-year anniversary of the story. And so Pati Chapoy started all over again, saying,
While the case is
Gloria-
ongoing, like,
no, there was no civil case yet. This
Oh.
was all scandal stuff that happened in Mexico. But they decided to do a 10-year anniversary on the scandal, and they basically, the story was, just because she was acquitted doesn't mean she's innocent, and Mexicans are very quick to forget. We need to boycott her music, boycott her store, her events. Don't forget who she is. Well, that was in April of 2009. And so she had had enough, and she was referred to me, and we filed a defamation lawsuit in April of 2009 against TV Azteca and against Pati Chapoy and some of their affiliated companies. Well, the first problem was jurisdiction, because this is a Mexican broadcaster who broadcasts from Mexico. So how do we get jurisdiction in a Texas state court, particularly in Hidalgo County? So that was the first big battle. TV Azteca and Chapoy filed what's called a special appearance, contesting the jurisdiction of the court, and we had to fight that. So we fought that. Gloria was living at the time in McAllen, and in Texas, under Texas law, we can file venue for the lawsuit can be where the plaintiff resides, where the defamation occurred, and the broadcast from TV Azteca, even though it went all over Mexico, also played in the Rio Grande Valley on both the Mexican channel as well as Azteca America out of Los Angeles, California. They had an American channel. And so there were two different Azteca channels, English and Spanish, where it was being played in McAllen. So that's how we got venue. And jurisdiction was a little more complicated, but we were able to show that Azteca was exploiting the signal by selling advertising in the Rio Grande Valley, because they would market their channel by saying, "Look, we have signal in the Rio Grande Valley. You can look at our viewership and advertise with us, and you'll be able to access our viewers." So we were able to show purposeful availment, and we prevailed in the trial court on special appearance. Azteca appealed that to the Court of Appeals. We prevailed there. Then they appealed it to the Texas Supreme Court. We won there, unanimous decision. And then Azteca filed a petition for writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court. So I had to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court with this case. And the Supreme Court agreed that there was jurisdiction. So come back to the trial court. In addition to that, we've had 3 additional trips to the Texas Supreme Court on what's called anti-SLAPP motions and on a summary judgment motion. So over the course of 16 years, with this one case, I've been to the United States Supreme Court 1 time and the Texas Supreme Court 4 times, and we're just getting started on the discovery. So, 16 years and counting.
So do you foresee it going on for much longer?
Yes, we are. It seems to be mushrooming. Now we have some related cases pending in California. There's 2 cases that got filed in California. These, Jane Does, supposedly, it's as if they're new victims coming out of the woodwork 25 years later, which is not true. It's the same characters from way back then. They just repackaged and refiled under California law. And so my co-counsel over there is Camille Vasquez. She's the lawyer for Johnny Depp in the Amber Heard trial. So she's taking the lead, obviously, in the California litigation, and I'm taking the lead on the Texas litigation.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say, that's your longest ongoing case? What about your longest time in trial?
I've tried a lot of cases. Most of them, I would say, are probably week long to 2 weeks long or a week and a half. But the longest case that I was in a civil jury trial on was probably 5 weeks. I've had a couple of 4-week trials and I had a 5-week trial. The 5-week trial was a an oil field explosion case, and it was tried in Zapata County, and we didn't think it would last 5 weeks. It didn't. We didn't start out thinking it was going to be 5 weeks. We thought it'd be a couple of weeks, but just circumstances. The trial went long, and it was during Lent. It was like we were starting the trial at the beginning of Lent, and so I gave up. Catholic that I am, I gave up fried food and tortillas for Lent.
So you couldn't eat anything over there.
So in Zapata, man, there was nothing to eat. I mean, everything's either fried or tortillas. And so I really struggled through that trial. Also gave up alcohol. 5 weeks is a long time to go. Thankfully, got a good result.
And then did you indulge afterwards with?
Boy, I must have had fried chicken and flour tortillas every single meal for the next several weeks. And to catch up. Zapata is actually a wonderful place. We got treated so well there, and there's some of the best chicken fried steak is available in Zapata. So imagine being in Zapata for 5 weeks. I love chicken fried steak, and I couldn't have it, and it's right there. So this is some of the best in the state.
It was torture.
And it was torture. It was torture.
Oh man,
those poor jurors. They don't get paid anything. I mean, they get paid, I don't know, whatever it was back then, $10 or $14 a day.
Yeah.
So they weren't expecting the case to go that long, and they're suffering because they're away from work. So the judge said, "What are we going to do?" And so we got together with the judge outside the presence of the jury with opposing counsel, and we agreed to do supplemental pay for the jurors, because otherwise we would have lost. The case would have had to been mistried. They would have one or more of the jurors would have quit. And we would have had to start all over again. So we got together and came up with a scheme to where we would pay the county some money, and then the county would supplement pay the jurors. And that's how we got through the 5 weeks.
Well, that's thoughtful. I mean, worked out for both sides. But
yeah. And we provided meals. And yes, they got fried food and tortillas, and I did not. The guy that was doing the catering would bring me a hamburger. Okay. But my bun was lettuce, or he'd bring me grilled chicken and lettuce. Okay, that's not me, but that's how I got through it.
I mean, you do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do.
So throughout all this time, you're practicing law, you're growing your practice, you're becoming partner. At what point do you settle down and decide to get married, have kids?
I met Sandra at St. Mary's University, so I knew her since undergrad. She was dating another fraternity brother of mine and a friend, good friend. After my first year of law school, I got a summer job with a law firm in downtown San Antonio, Gresham, Davis, Gregory, Worthy, and more. And that summer, I started hanging out with Sandra. Her boyfriend they had split up, and my girlfriend at the time and I had split up. So Sandra and I were already friends, and we started hanging out that summer. And so, things developed, and by the time I applied for a job down in the Valley, we were already pretty much together. I don't remember if we were formally engaged or not, but we had already talked about getting married. So I knew when I came to the Valley, I already had, I was engaged, so to speak. I don't know if I'd given the ring or not, but I was engaged. So if I got to the Valley in August of 1988, and I had 6 months here where I was not married, and then we got married April Fool's Day of 89. So we've now been married 37 years. She was not from the Valley, and
what was her first thoughts on the Valley?
Well, when I asked her, I said, "Hey, I could stay in Austin, and take this job with the Attorney General's office, or we could go down to the Rio Grande Valley. We could do that." And she's like, "I'll follow wherever you want to go. I'll follow you wherever you want to go." Well, at that point, she hadn't been to Presidio. And shortly after that, we went to go see my mom in Presidio and my mom's family in Ojinaga. And she's like, "Let me revise that. I will follow you anywhere except Presidio." I was like, "Oh, man."
Yeah, you said anywhere.
You said anywhere. You and I have had a chance to travel to Presidio. You know how much I just love that place, and you can see why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to be there.
Beautiful to travel out there. but definitely a different way of life.
Totally different way of life.
Yeah. I don't know if I could go being that far away from Target or a mall or, I mean, there's not a lot out there.
Well, that was Sandra's issue, right? There's no Target. The nearest Target would be,
Hours away.
4 hours away. From Presidio, 4 hours away.
Yeah.
El Paso or Midland.
Yeah. I mean, the little conveniences that we take for granted. I use Target delivery often.
Can you imagine delivery to Presidio?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they'd reject it.
I mean, even if it was like now they're doing Amazon, drone deliveries. I don't think a drone battery is going to go that far.
Yeah. Or, I mean, maybe what happened to Rob's drone might happen.
Yeah, some bird will attack it.
Yeah. So at what point did you guys have kids? Y'all moved down here, and how long had y'all been married, and then y'all decided to have a family?
Well, we got married in August, in April of '89. After about a year or so, we thought, okay, we're going to start a family, and it's interesting that it never turns out exactly what you think. And once we decided we wanted to try to have a family, it didn't just happen.
Right.
And we even thought, oh my goodness, are we going to need to go get help? And I mean, reading up on this and that, and so Sandra did get pregnant. And our first child was delivered in July of 1992. Our daughter Hannah was born on July 14th of 1992. So that's what 91, 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the marriage. No, that's not right. 3 years into the marriage. So I'm a lawyer, not a math.
Close enough.
Yeah, yeah. So we had Hannah, and then Sandra got pregnant again about a year and a half later. She had to deliver Christina very prematurely. Christina weighed 1 pound at birth, but was alive and fully formed, and but obviously in neonatal care. And we got to keep her for 30 days before we lost her. But that drew Sandra and I really close together. Probably saved our marriage. And then she got pregnant again 2 years later, and we lost that one in the womb. And then she got pregnant a fourth time, and while she was pregnant is when I was serving on the TYLA board, and by then I was vice president, and they were asking me if I would run for president. They want me to run for president, or president-elect. And I said, I can't do that. Sandra's, my wife's pregnant. It's a high-risk pregnancy, and, something could happen, and I need to be there. And they were really pressuring me to run. And Sandra told me, she's like, you can't live life like that. You can't, she said, this is an incredible opportunity. You need to do this, and don't let fear stop you. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So sure enough, I started the campaign, and 3 weeks into the campaign, she was committed to bed rest, full-time bed rest. So that was the end of my campaigning out of office for TYLA president. I got 3 weeks in. And after that, I started making these, back then they were VHS tapes, big old VHS tapes, and sending them to the bar associations. And this is before social media. So, it was really hard to campaign from home. But I did what I could. And ultimately, just thought it was a foregone conclusion that I couldn't win. But it turns out, I did. I had a really good brochure, beautiful children, beautiful dogs, and that apparently that makes a statement with the lawyers. And my father-in-law would always tease me. He said, the only reason why you won was because nobody met you. He said, you can thank my daughter for you winning that race. And, he's probably right.
Well, I mean, I think that's an incredible testament to Sandra's belief and her faith in you. It's an incredible, difficult thing to go through, but to still, encourage you to run for that position and to stand by your side through it. And then also for you to stop your campaigning, to prioritize her and her health and the health of y'all's child. And now y'all have a beautiful family.
Yeah. Ray Ray's born. That was Ray Ray's pregnancy. She was pregnant with Ray, and he was born, I think, 5 weeks early. As a result of that, even though he was 5 weeks early, look at him now. I mean, he's almost 6'2",
Yeah,
and
he's
he
a
came out
tall
of the
guy.
womb, and he's a big boy. And good thing he didn't go to full term. I don't know how big he would have been.
So your kids, did they ever just want to follow in your footsteps of practicing law, studying law?
Yeah, I think they wanted to. They went through. I mean, like all children, my son wanted to be Superman. My daughter wanted to be a model. I mean, and all that, right? They go through that. At some point, I think in high school, Hannah decided that she probably was going to go to law school. She wanted to be a lawyer. She did mock trial at Mac High.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me to be her school's coach, which was like, really, you want your dad to be somewhere near you,
Yeah.
while you're in high school. And so I was her school's mock trial coach, and she did so well. I mean, she'd always win best advocate in every round that she did. And then she went to TCU, studied communications, and her thought was she was going to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
I never told my children you need to go to law school. That entirely whatever they want to do it. It's not going to dictate their
left it up to
careers.
them. Yeah.
It needs to be their passion, not mine. But that was the direction she was going, and she called me her sophomore year there at TCU and she said, Poppy, can I go to Paris this summer? I want to do an internship in Paris with some of my friends with Louis Vuitton. I was like, well, yeah, sure, great. I'd love for you to see Europe. It wasn't something I got to do growing up. I think that'd be great. And she said, well, the problem is I'm going to have to switch my major to fashion merchandising so that I can qualify for this for this program. But don't worry, when I get back, I'll switch it back to communications. I said, great, go for it. So she did, had a ball, got back. Next summer comes around, her junior year, and now she's like gotten an internship with Chan Lu, who I'd never heard of, but Chan Lu's on Broadway in New York. And so she wanted to spend the summer in New York doing that. And I said, yeah, that's fine. So she did that. And then she tells me, the bad news that she's not going to be able to switch her major back to communications and graduate on time. It's just the way things worked out. And, would that be okay? And I told her, I said, well, honey, I've heard of history majors getting into law school and math majors, even music majors, but I've never heard of a fashion merchandising major getting into law school. And she said, well, Poppy, I'll have you know that fashion law is a subspecialty of IP law, and it commands the highest hourly rate.
Wow.
Okay. But before she even graduated, she received an offer from Kendra Scott. Kendra was all the rage. It was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think Hannah was one of the first 20. She's probably like the 23rd employee of Kendra. She literally graduated on a Saturday. We moved her on a Sunday. She started work on a Monday. And Kendra offered her stock options. So in addition to a starting salary with stock options, and the plan was Kendra was going to grow and then, sell the company or go public. And it was a great opportunity for her. So by the time she's 23 years old, she's already traveling to China for Kendra, because they would design and mold in Austin, but they would create the jewelry in these plants in China. So she'd fly to Hong Kong and manage these plants, that for on-time delivery, for price, for, all that. And man, she's young girl doing that stuff. So that's the end of that one in terms of law school.
Yeah.
And then my son was he thought he was going to go to law school, and he went to TCU. Communications major. He stuck with that. He didn't switch to fashion merchandising. He played football for TCU as a walk-on, and when he graduated from TCU, he started applying to law schools, took the LSAT, and I think we've talked about this before with him on the podcast, and then ultimately decided he didn't want to go to law school and he wanted to make a run at the ranch. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, y'all got a great thing going out there.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The jerky's great.
Yeah, last Sunday, what's today, Monday?
Mm-hmm.
So just yesterday, we had this family reached out to us, through our webpage and said they raise Wagyu cattle in Costa Rica. And they said, we heard about your place and we know you've got great genetics. Can we come see you? And so I didn't have anything to do with it. Ray worked it out with them, and they showed up. They were there all weekend. Sandra and I were able to have dinner with them last night at the ranch. What a wonderful family from Costa Rica. Husband and wife and a 28-year-old son who's essentially my son's age.
Yeah.
Solid family. They've been in the Wagyu business 5 years. And we had such a wonderful time with them. I call them lifers. You can already tell these are going to be lifelong friends.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an instant connection. So they were really excited about our genetics and about our program, and they invested in our program, and they're going to be taking our genetics down to Costa Rica and developing them out.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You're going global.
Going global.
Yeah.
Well, we already, we have genetics in Australia, and got some in Canada and some in Mexico. So yeah, but now we're in Costa Rica.
Well, we'll have to have Ray on to talk more about that on the next episode.
Yeah.
Tell everybody all about how that works, because I'm sure that's really interesting.
It is. It is. Yeah, there's all sorts of protocols on how you can move semen from this country to that country.
That'll be the title of the episode. That's great. So what do you believe makes you a great trial lawyer? We've heard about what people have said about you, but in all your experience and your time being a trial lawyer, what do you think makes a great trial lawyer, makes you be able to perform your best?
Well, I don't think I'm a great trial lawyer. That I would never. I just don't know that I'm a great trial lawyer. I can name you several great trial lawyers that I've personally known, and I've always said this: there are so many lawyers that have far more talent than I do. They're more articulate. They're more, they're taller. They're handsome. Or beautiful, or they're whatever. They got all these different qualities and talents that I don't have. But there's one thing that I have, and that is I will out-prepare anyone. And that's just what I've done. I will out-prepare my opponent every time. And I'm relentless about that. And so I will have mastered the file before a hearing, before a deposition, before a jury trial. Every document, I'll have committed to memory. I mean, I'll out-prepare them. There's an old comics, and I grew up with comics. You don't see comics anymore. But Archie, there was Archie comics. And there was Archie and Reggie and Betty and Veronica. So Reggie was this guy who was born with all this great talent. And he was a great basketball player. Whatever he did, he was great at it. Didn't even have to practice. Archie, man, he had to go to the gym. He had to work. He had to practice. He had to practice and practice and practice. Well, I'm Archie. That's me. I would say that aside from the preparation, it's remembering why we do this. It's not for the money, because, I heard this from a friend of mine, Wes Christian. Money may follow greatness, but greatness never chases money. And so, as long as I remember that this is not a business, this is a profession, this is a noble profession, and it's a calling. And I don't do this for me, I do it for my client, then the financial stuff takes care of itself. But I think that in order to be considered a great lawyer, it's more than victories in the courtroom. It is service to the others.
I think that's really wonderful. There is something that I remember you told me when we were driving through all the hills and mountains on our way from Presidio to, what was like around the Big Bend area?
Lajitas?
Yeah.
Terlingua?
Yeah, around that area
Redford?
when we were going up and down and out, and I had to make an excuse so you could drive.
Oh, yeah.
um, you were telling me about how when you were younger and you guys would, you'd see a hill or a small mountain and you'd want to climb it, and that you compared that to a lot of the things in your life. You see something difficult, you don't turn the other way. You want to push through it. You want to endure what it takes to get up to the top. And I've seen that through just knowing you this little, couple months through the campaign. I think you're very passionate about what you do. I think you're very good about what you do. I think you've done a lot of good for the world and for a lot of people. And so very grateful to know you and to have met you.
Thank you, Liz. Well, this campaign has been one of the blessings has been getting to know you and getting to know Rob, and both of you. Your professionalism is off the charts, and hopefully, when this campaign is over, we're going to turn it into the ranch. We're going to do something with the ranch.
Oh, there's so much we can do.
Yeah.
The ranch. I just love to keep working with you. Everybody that I meet, I really do tell them, Ray's just such a great person. He's done so much good. He's a good person. There was a gentleman today at the courthouse. He was not an attorney. He was there for some sort of case. And he was telling me, he's like, why are you working with these attorneys? Like all attorneys are crooks. And he's like, you should know that, especially here out of the Valley. And I was taken aback. I'm like, well, I respect your opinion, but let me tell you, as somebody who grew up around a lot of attorneys, knowing a lot of attorneys, there's a lot of good attorneys out there. And I can tell you, Mr. Thomas is one of them. He's done a lot of good. He's an honest person. So you don't need to worry about, because he was like, no, he's not going to be successful in his campaign and, blah, 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 just kind of bashing all attorneys. And I was like, no, you can trust that if he's successful in his campaign, he's going to do good and he's going to do right by the profession and by attorneys, and as much as they're able to through the state bar. And I was kind of able to shift his mindset a little bit, because I did see him he went from being really upset and, puffed up about the subject to kind of soften and being like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just a little emotional right now. So I guess that leads me back to talking to some of your leadership qualities. And you talked a little bit about working with TYLA as a president, vice president, and then being successful in your campaign for president-elect, your short campaign. How did you get involved after TYLA, with more of like the state bar leadership?
Well, because of TYLA, so Texas Young Lawyers Association, every young lawyer is automatically a member of Texas Young Lawyers Association. And the way I got involved in that was now he's a judge in Starr County, Valdemar Garza. He was the first Hispanic chair of the TYLA board. And he was working with a lawyer from Laredo named Kenny Valls, who we went to undergrad together, we're fraternity brothers, went to law school together. He was in my wedding, and he was the TYLA director for District 12, which includes Laredo. And him and Judge Garza now Judge Garza, we're talking about, hey, we need to get more people from the Valley involved. All the resources are going to the big cities, and we're not getting any attention, so let's start to get more people involved. So they got me to run for the TYLA District 12 spot, which is the whole Rio Grande Valley and Laredo. And I say run, I didn't have to run. It was just like, will you do it? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I got on there, and immediately the first meeting I went to, Sandra was with me, and I just felt total a sense of imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know any of these people. I don't belong here. This is not for me. And, and it's interesting because the people that I met on that day that were also joining the board, now they're Judge Todd Wong in Austin, and almost everybody I served with on TYLA is now a judge or a federal judge or a state district judge or just super successful, general counsel of AT&T. They've gone on to great success. But the way the bar is structured, whoever is president of TYLA automatically serves on the state bar board. So TYLA president-elect, president, then immediate past president, those 3 years I also served on the state bar board. So they are permanent positions with the state bar board. So being on the state bar board during those 3 years, we have the opportunity to work very closely with the state bar leadership And it just so happened that I had a very close relationship with the state bar president at the time, Charlie Aycock, who was from Muleshoe, Texas. Before him was Richard Benya. Richard and I got along great. So both Richard and Charlie involved me in really the inner leadership, like the executive committee, the budget committee, the sunset committee, all of the most important committees. Charlie had me at his side, and so that gave me really some really good insight and experience into the running of the state bar. Tony Alvarado at the time was the executive director, and I was very close to Tony because he's from Laredo, so he was one of my father-in-law's real close friends. So I remember Tony was thinking about retiring, and I told him, I said, if I run for TYLA president, you got to promise me you're going to wait to retire until after I get through. And of course, the tail doesn't wag the dog, but Tony did stay until I completed my term as TYLA president.
And even as right now you're chair of the litigation section, you've done some really great things.
I've been on the litigation council since, I believe, 2015, maybe even before that. I didn't realize it had been that long, but this morning I went to go get a Yeti for my coffee. And when I pulled out this one Yeti, is an old beat up Yeti. It says Litigation Council 2015-2016. So I might have been on before that, but I was at least on by then. And so I have that. This year as chair has been super rewarding because I have the most phenomenal council, great lawyers from around the state who are super energetic. And we created that trial academy from whole cloth and put it on here in the Rio Grande Valley in Edinburgh at our new beautiful courthouse. And we had the opportunity to teach trial skills to many young lawyers and bringing in the best talent from around the state to do that and to let them go, and our judges here in Hidalgo County. I don't know about anywhere else in the state, but our judges were so giving and accommodating and helpful. They just canceled their dockets for the whole day so that we could have the run of the courthouse. And so because of that, we were able to put these young lawyers in real courtrooms and let them, after doing some teaching, they were able to do opening and directs and cross-examinations and closings in a real courtroom. So in a real courtroom setting with real feedback. So, all the feedback from that program, from that academy, they were very glowing. And then in January this year, we also started for the first time a CLE that was directed at young lawyers called Conquering the Courtroom. And it was to bring in young lawyers from around the state and at a very low cost CLE. The Trial Academy was free, by the way. And give practical advice to these young lawyers on how to navigate the courthouse, and in particular a courtroom. So it wasn't just substantive law; it was also just good practical advice on how to get around and proper etiquette and things like that. So this year we've made a concerted effort to focus on the young lawyers and young lawyer development. And the reason why we did that is because that's where I think the greatest need is. We have so many young lawyers that don't have the traditional mentorships that existed 20, 30 years ago, where you'd come into a firm and you'd be developed, informed by mentors before you had to go out on your own. Now so many lawyers are getting out of law school, starting a law practice with no mentorship at all. And it's resulting in some clients are underserved, and judges talk to me and said, well, what can we do about this? And so we're trying to do something about that. And, it's working.
Yeah. It's a noble cause.
Getting great feedback for it. So hopefully those that come after us will continue to do the same. And if the lawyers of this state choose me as their next president-elect, I can assure you that one of our big focuses will continue to be development of young lawyers. Well, thanks for tuning in. This has been another episode of Legal Beef Podcast. Hopefully next time the beef side of this equation will join us. So be sure to follow us and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.